My name is Noelle Arden, 32 years old. The December sun had that washed-out gold that made everything look like forgiveness. My mother's house shimmered with it, balloons swaying in the window, ribbons taped with military precision, and the faint sound of children's laughter spilling through the door before I even stepped inside. From the street, it looked perfect. The kind of family scene people post online to prove love is still alive. Inside, it smelled like frosting and floor polish, the kind of smell that tries too hard. My mother was at the center of it all, smile rehearsed, pearls catching the light as if she'd choreographed the afternoon. "Noelle, you made it," she called, waving a hand like a pageant queen. My father lifted his glass in half a greeting, eyes already drifting back to his phone. On the sofa, my sister lounged like royalty, scrolling through something infinitely more interesting than the room. But the first thing I noticed wasn't them. It was the absence of Peggy. My daughter's laughter was always the highest note in any room, but here it was missing. "Where's Peggy?" I asked. "Bathroom, I think," my sister said without looking up. Too quick, too smooth. The hall was quiet, the kind of quiet that has a pulse. When I pushed the bathroom door open, Peggy sat on the tiled floor, her yellow dress crumpled like tissue paper. Her party hat had slid sideways, half covering her eyes. She looked up at me, tried to smile, failed halfway. "Hey," I said softly, kneeling down. "What happened?" She picked at the ribbon on her wrist. Grandma laughed at me. "For what?" "I called you Mom." Her voice shrank into itself. "She said I shouldn't say that. She said you're not my real mom." For a second, the air thinned. "She said maybe you'll change your mind," Peggy whispered. "She said sometimes people do." It was such a small voice, but it hit like a blade. I took her hand. "Look at me," I said. "I am your mom, always." She nodded, a trembling little motion. "She gave everyone else a present," she added, so quiet I almost missed it. "She said maybe next year I'll get one, when I'm really family." I wanted to scream. Instead, I breathed. In, out, steady, controlled. "Okay," I said finally. "Let's get you cleaned up." We washed her face, fixed her hair, straightened her hat. She looked like she was trying to believe in normal again. On the sink sat her small notebook, the one with doodles of cats wearing lopsided crowns. She clutched it to her chest as we left. Back in the living room, the noise felt wrong now. My mother stood with a glass of punch, chatting, glowing, as if cruelty were just another form of entertainment. My father scrolled. My sister smirked, and my daughter's world had just been rearranged by a few well-placed words. "Party's over," I said. No one looked up. "Party's over," I repeated louder. My sister gave a short laugh. "Relax, Noelle. They're just playing." I walked to the TV and pulled the plug. The screen went black. Now they looked. "What's gotten into you?" my mother asked, tone sharp, but still dressed in civility. "Everyone needs to leave," I said. "Don't be ridiculous." Now. Something in my voice must have landed, because within minutes, cousins were shuffling out with leftover cupcakes and confused faces. Chairs scraped. Wrapping paper rustled. The room deflated. When the door shut behind the last guest, only my parents remained seated. "We're not leaving," my mother said with a dry laugh. "We live here." I didn't answer. I didn't trust what might come out if I did. I just turned and walked down the hall, back to Peggy's room. She was on her bed, notebook open, tracing a small drawing with her finger. The cat with the crooked crown. "I didn't do anything bad," she murmured. "I know," I said. "You did everything right." She smiled, small and tired, then lay down. I sat beside her until her breathing evened out. Something inside me shifted then, quietly, like a lock turning. No more pretending this was normal. No more excuses disguised as family values. I stood in the doorway, watching her sleep. Down the hall, my parents' voices carried, soft, indistinct, but threaded with irritation. I caught one phrase. "What's wrong with her?" It wasn't a question, it was a diagnosis. I closed Peggy's door halfway and leaned against the wall. For years, I'd told myself my family was flawed, but loving. That their coldness was just habit. That maybe, someday, they'd see me, not as the backup daughter, but as a person. But standing there, I realized something colder. They saw me just fine. They just decided who I was, and nothing I did would change that. I thought of my brother, Adam, the family's golden investment. Every achievement a shared victory, every failure a communal crisis. And Lily, my sister, the baby who never needed to earn love because she arrived with it. Then there was me, the steady one, the dependable one, the one who didn't need attention because I'd been trained to survive without it. Love in our house had always been rationed by usefulness, and apparently I'd reached my expiration date. When Mom and Dad's finances collapsed, it was me they turned to. Just for a few months, they'd said no. I said yes because that's what the reliable one does. Now I stood in my own hallway, listening to them laugh softly in the living room as if the afternoon hadn't cracked something open beyond repair. In the kitchen, the leftover cake sat half-cut, a line of candles still bent at awkward angles. On the counter, Mom's gift bags were stacked neatly, labeled with other children's names. None for Peggy. I took one candle and pressed it out with my fingers. The wax burned, just enough to leave a mark. Tomorrow, I decided, would not look like today. I walked to my room, sat on the bed, and opened my laptop. The screen glowed in the dark. My reflection looked foreign, tired, alert, certain. I searched the words tenant rights, family eviction. The irony made me laugh once, bitterly. Then I clicked the first link. In the other room, my parents' laughter rose again, light and practiced. My sister's voice joined through a phone call speaker, gossiping. Peggy shifted in her sleep. I listened to her soft breathing. Always, I whispered to no one. Tomorrow, I'd act. Morning broke like a hard reset. Clear light, cold edges. I woke to a steadiness I recognized from other decisive days, the ones where you pick a path and accept the cost. Peggy padded into the kitchen in socks, hair a sleepy halo. I poured her cereal, kissed the top of her head, and slid a lunchbox toward her. The ordinary movement steadied my hands. My parents were already there. Dad at the table with the paper open, glasses low on his nose, Mom stirring sugar into coffee, as if sweetness could be manufactured from ritual. I set the white envelope on the table between their mugs. It looked small. It wasn't. "What's this?" Mom asked without looking up. "Notice to vacate," I said. 30 days. Silence lifted its head. Dad's eyes rose over the rims of his glasses. Mom's spoon paused, then resumed its orbit. She laughed, light as a clink of ice. "Very funny, Noelle." "It's not a joke. We're family," Dad said, as if that word was a legal defense. "Exactly," I said. Peggy's spoon scraped the bowl. My voice stayed level. "Breakfast is for eating, not arguing. We'll talk when we're calm." Dad pushed the envelope back with 2 fingers, like it was something unsanitary. "You're overreacting." "You told my daughter she isn't my real child," I said. "This is me reacting appropriately." Mom's smile thinned. "We were worried about you. You don't know what you're getting into." "I know exactly what I'm in," I said. "Motherhood." Peggy looked between us, reading the air. I touched her shoulder. "Shoes, love." She nodded and ran to the mudroom. Mom leaned in, dropping the gentility. "You can't make us homeless." "You can stay with Lily," I said, even though we both knew Lily's house was just a set piece she used to stage her busyness. "Or Adam." A flicker crossed Dad's face, something like pride mixed with panic. "Your brother has responsibilities." "So do I." I walked Peggy to the door. The morning sun cooled my skin. As we stepped outside, my mother called in her sugared tone, "We'll chat later." It sounded like a line she'd practiced. At school drop-off, Peggy squeezed my hand. "Will Grandma and Grandpa be mad?" "They're already mad," I said honestly, "but it isn't about you." She nodded like a soldier receiving orders, then let go and ran toward the door with her little backpack thumping. I watched until she disappeared. On my way home, I called Eli, my husband, and laid out the plan again, confirming details like a pilot's checklist. 30 days on paper, he said, but you'll put teeth in it. "Teeth, backbone, and a firewall," I said. He chuckled. It loosened something in my chest. Back at the house, the envelope was gone from the table, but everything else had been turned a degree louder. Cabinet doors thudded. The sink ran on, as if water could fill the silence that had formed between 2 sides of the same roof. Mom baked as if performance could absolve, cookie trays cooling like apologies nobody asked for. Dad reorganized the spice rack in military formation. A box labeled "trash" sat by the door. On top, 2 of Peggy's figurines peeked out, a plastic fox and a tiny astronaut. I retrieved them like evidence. At lunch, Mom set a plate of cookies on the counter, the way a politician lays flowers at a memorial. "Made your favorites," she said brightly. I didn't move. "Put the fox and the astronaut back where you found them." She blinked, then blushed with offense. "You're being hostile." "I'm being precise." The house learned a new language over the next few days. Passive-aggressive, fluent and crisp. Doors closed with more authority. The TV volume crept higher at dinner time. Notes appeared in Mom's tidy script. Remember to buy real milk. Noelle, the dishwasher arrangement is inefficient. Dad began leaving the garage door open, winter wind drilling into the house like a complaint. When I shut it, he reopened it 10 minutes later, claiming he needed air. On day 3, the front door swung without a warning knock. Lily stepped in, coat loose, sunglasses like armor. "Wow," she said, sweeping the room with a smirk. "You actually did it." "Coffee?" I asked, already knowing the answer. She shook her head. "They called me. They're heartbroken. I'm sure losing free rent hurts." "Listen to yourself," she said. "They're your parents. They're adults who told my daughter she isn't mine." "They were worried about you," she said, with the confidence of someone who's never been contradicted at the dinner table. "Everyone thinks you rushed into this adoption." "Everyone meaning you?" "I have 3 kids," she said. "I know what hard looks like." "Then you also know not to aim hard at a child." She rolled her eyes so hard the ceiling felt implicated. "You should be taking care of them. You're older. You have more bedrooms. And you have more opinions than rooms, apparently." Her lips curled. "You've got 1 child. One who's not even—" She stopped like a diver who suddenly remembered there's no water in the pool. "Not even what?" I asked. The room narrowed. Her face drained. "Forget it." "Can't," I said. The moment hung like wet laundry, heavy, unavoidable. Her phone buzzed. She grabbed her bag, already half turned toward the door. "You're impossible." "Thanks for stopping by," I said, and closed the door behind her before she could slam it and claim the last word. That night, Eli and I sat shoulder to shoulder at the dining table, the printer humming like a warm-blooded thing. The blue-white light painted our hands. We adjusted margins, edited dates, printed again. 30 days, clear terms, signatures. The sound the printer made was the first honest agreement the house had produced in months. We slid the notice into a page protector because some words deserve armor. "Next?" Eli asked. "We tightened the perimeter," I said, and the words didn't feel melodramatic. They felt accurate. The next morning, I changed the Wi-Fi password. I removed the TV remotes and put them in a kitchen drawer beside the corkscrew. I typed a neat list and posted it on the fridge with 2 magnets shaped like lemons. House rules. Effective immediately. Shared spaces. Kitchen and upstairs hall. Bath only. No guests without prior approval. No reorganizing of belongings not your own. Quiet hours. 8 p.m., 7 a.m. Do not discard items that are not yours. Mom read the list with a shocked little laugh. "This is childish, she said. "I learned from the best," I replied. Dad folded his arms. "You can't treat your parents this way." "You stopped being parents," I said, "the minute you endangered my child." That line seemed to vacuum the air out of the room. Mom's eyes filmed over, whether from tears or outrage, I couldn't tell. She retreated to the guest room and shut the door like she was closing a stage curtain. By afternoon, the house had a new ecosystem. No TV chatter, no background commentary. Peggy sat at the kitchen table drawing. Today's cat wore a crown so crooked it looked like a question. "Are they still mad?" she asked. "I think they're embarrassed," I said. "Will they go away?" "Yes." She nodded, satisfied, then kept coloring. The scratch of her pencil was the only sound, a kind of brave music. That evening, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail and listened on speaker while Eli washed dishes. "Hello, this is Child Protective Services. We're reviewing notes and may need a follow-up." The voice was neutral, too neutral. The practiced tone of someone who's heard every lie and every truth told in the same register. A cold line traced my spine. I thanked the message as if politeness could bend fate. Eli dried his hands and leaned on the counter. "They won't find anything," he said. "I know," I said. We both heard how thin the confidence sounded. Sleep became a hallway with many doors, none of them leading out. Every creak turned into a footstep. Every car passing outside idled at the edges of my thoughts as if waiting to be invited in. Twice I got up to check Peggy, to listen to the soft, innocent metronome of her breath. Twice I stood at the guest room door and stared at the wood grain, imagining the conversations happening on the other side, strategies wrapped in concern, gossip dressed as prayer. 2 days later, Mom and Dad left in their Sunday coats, saying they were visiting friends. The house felt briefly spacious, relieved. I made tea, answered 2 work emails, stacked school permission slips. Peace moved through the rooms like a shy animal. By late afternoon, my phone pinged with the unmistakable chatter of Facebook notifications. Dozens. I opened the app, and there it was. A photo of our hallway, boxes stacked by the wall. Caption: abandoned by our own daughter. Some people forget who raised them. Comment bouquets. Pity. Outrage. Applause from people I hadn't seen since high school. Aunt Linda chimed in with a red-faced emoji and so heartbreaking. Of course, I thought. This wasn't about being heard. It was about being seen. And my parents had always curated an audience. I took one breath, then wrote one post. Clean, surgical. At my daughter's birthday, my parents humiliated her and then filed false claims with CPS. The investigation is ongoing. I'm protecting my child. I posted it and put my phone face down. Within an hour, the tide turned the way tides do. Slowly, then all at once. Friends messaged. A neighbor wrote, "We've seen how you love that little girl." An old family friend said, "Some of us always knew." By midnight, my mother's post was gone, deleted or archived under shame. The online silence that followed was louder than their outrage had been. In the real house, the sound of suitcase wheels whispered over hardwood. I didn't go downstairs. I didn't need to. "We're leaving," Mom called up the staircase, breathy and brittle. "I know," I said from Peggy's doorway. A long pause. Dad's voice, low. "You'll regret this." "Maybe," I said, "but not today." The door closed. Somewhere outside, the night gathered them up. For the first time in months, the rooms didn't feel divided. They felt like rooms. Peggy and I ate pancakes for dinner. She spilled syrup and we laughed. Easy, loose, like two people practicing how to belong. When I tucked her in, she whispered, "Is it just us now?" "For now," I said, "and that's enough." The house rested. I almost did too. The next afternoon, a hard knock rattled the glass in the front door. 3 sharp raps. Official. Practiced. Through the window, I saw a gray coat, a clipboard, a uniformed officer behind her, polite as a wall. I opened the door. "Mrs. Arden?" the woman asked. "I'm from Child Protective Services. We received a report concerning your daughter." The hallway tilted. For a heartbeat, I couldn't feel my hands. Behind the woman stood an officer with a neutral face, one hand resting on his belt like gravity alone kept it there. "Of course," I said, hearing my own voice from somewhere else. "Come in." The house felt suddenly too clean, too deliberate. Every picture frame gleamed like an alibi. I caught sight of my reflection in the mirror, hair neat, jaw tight, eyes too awake. "Who else is home?" she asked. "My parents," I said automatically, then corrected, "temporarily." The word tasted bitter. "Good," she replied. "We'll need to speak with everyone." I called up the stairs. Mom's voice floated down, syrup sweet and falsely surprised. "Oh my goodness, what's this about?" The social worker smiled, that polite, impenetrable smile of people who have heard every story twice. "We just need a few minutes of your time." For 40 minutes, my home turned into a stage. Peggy went first. They led her into the spare room, the same room that used to hold my parents' luggage, and closed the door. Her small voice drifted through, soft rises and falls, words I couldn't catch. Every time she laughed faintly, my breath loosened, then seized again. Eli arrived midway, still in his work jacket. I met him at the door, whispering the situation in fragments. He nodded once, jaw locked. "Do they know who called?" he murmured. "They never say," I whispered back. When it was my turn, the woman led me to the dining table, clipboard open. Her pen moved fast. "Your daughter attends which school?" "Lakeside Elementary, 1st grade." "Medical provider?" "Dr. Patel." "Any disciplinary issues?" "No," I said, then forced a smile. She's drawing cats and crowns right now." Her pen paused, then resumed. "Anyone else involved in caregiving?" "My husband and I, no one else." "Your parents live here?" "Temporarily," I repeated, "until the end of the month." She nodded, writing that word down. The way she underlined it made my throat tighten. "Would you mind if I saw your daughter's room?" "Of course." I led her down the hall, each step sounding louder than the last. I opened the door with the care of someone revealing evidence. Peggy's bed was made, books stacked neatly. On the desk, her notebook lay open to a page of cats wearing crowns, each one a little straighter than the last. The social worker smiled faintly. "She likes to draw." "She's good at it," I said too quickly. "Better than me, anyway." She made another note, thanked me, then went to speak with my parents. I didn't follow. I sat on the stairs, staring at the railing, listening to the tones instead of words. My mother's practiced politeness, Dad's grave, low murmurs, their duet of credibility. I wanted to stand up, to shout through the door that these were the people who taught me to apologize for existing. But I stayed still, fingers pressed into my knees until the blood stopped moving. Finally, the door opened. The social worker's face revealed nothing. "Thank you for your time," she said. "We'll be in touch once we complete the report." The front door clicked behind her, and I knew before I looked that my parents were watching me. Mom's lips curled in a soft, triumphant smile. Dad leaned back in his chair, satisfied. "You called them," I said quietly. Mom blinked, feigning confusion. "Called who?" "CPS. Don't be absurd," she said. "If someone contacted them, maybe they were concerned." "Someone like you." She put a hand to her chest. "Noelle, you're being paranoid. We'd never—" "You already did worse," I said. For the first time in weeks, she didn't have a script ready. "You have 1 week," I told them. "Not 30 days. 1. Dad scoffed. "You can't do that." "I can, and I did." I turned away before I could see their faces rearrange into something pitiful. Upstairs, Peggy's laughter drifted faintly from her room. A cartoon played on her tablet. That sound steadied me better than any law ever could. The next morning, I posted the new notice on their door. 7 days. The letters looked almost kind in their font, like a warning delivered by a polite ghost. By afternoon, the counter filled with more cookies, a peace offering from someone who didn't understand the crime. I tossed them out without comment. The house became a quiet standoff. They stayed in their room most of the time. When they emerged, it was for performance, loud conversations on speakerphone with friends, careful sighs near open doors. I ignored it all. Then, that night, my phone rang again. Same neutral voice. "Mrs. Arden, just a brief update. We're still reviewing the information. Some details were concerning." The word hung in the air. Concerning was bureaucratic code for someone said something ugly. After the call, Eli set his hand on mine. "They'll see through it," he said. "Maybe," I whispered. "But how much damage happens before truth catches up?" I didn't sleep. The fridge hum grew into a drone, like a countdown. Every shadow felt like a test of patience. 2 days later, Mom and Dad left early again. I told myself I didn't care. I even turned on music for Peggy and made pancakes shaped like stars. She giggled at the crooked ones. For a few minutes, we existed in a bubble of syrup and normalcy. Then my phone pinged. Dozens of notifications. I didn't want to look, but I did. There it was, a photo of our hallway, posted from Mom's account. Boxes stacked neatly by the wall. Caption: abandoned by our own daughter. Some people forget who raised them. The comments were a carnival. Sympathy, outrage, heart emojis, scripture quotes. Aunt Linda. So heartbreaking. Some children lose their way. I stared at the screen, pulse steadying into disbelief. It wasn't enough that they'd humiliated my daughter. Now they needed an audience. I could almost hear Mom dictating the post, carefully choosing every phrase. I sat there considering silence. Then I chose precision. I wrote one post. At my daughter's birthday, my parents humiliated her in front of family and called CPS with false claims. The investigation is ongoing. I'm protecting my child. No adjectives, no theatrics, just truth. Within an hour, the tide turned. Comments poured in. "Good for you, Noelle. Proud of you for standing up for her. We all knew how they treated you." By midnight, my mother's post vanished. Deleted, perhaps, or reported. The silence online grew heavy, like the pause between thunder and its echo. Then I heard it, the low rumble of wheels on hardwood. Suitcases again. "We're leaving," Mom called, voice trembling between anger and embarrassment. "I know," I said from the kitchen doorway. Dad's voice followed, rough and resigned. "You'll regret this." "Maybe," I said, "but not tonight." The door closed. For a while there was only quiet. Real quiet. The kind that has weight and mercy. Peggy climbed onto the counter beside me, holding her notebook. "They're gone?" "They are." She opened to a fresh page and began to draw, a cat again, but this one smiling, crown upright, eyes steady. Eli came in, wiped his hands on a towel, and leaned against the doorway. "So, are we safe?" I thought of the CPS call, the way the social worker had said, "concerning." I thought of the words my mother used, the ones she'd been planting for years. Too attached. Says what people want to hear. Phrases that had sounded familiar when I heard them echoed back. I looked at him. "Not yet," I said, "but closer." Outside, the night pressed against the windows, waiting. The next morning, my phone buzzed again. Email from CPS. Thank you for your cooperation. We'll follow up shortly. The words meant nothing and everything at once. I forwarded it to Eli, then stared at the inbox until the letters blurred. For the first time in months, no footsteps echoed down the hall. No performance waited behind doors. Peggy came running in, hair wild, holding up her drawing. "Mom, look! She fixed her crown!" I smiled. Good. She finally remembered who she is. And for the first time in forever, I believed the same about me. But as peace started to settle, a thought drifted in. What happens when silence is too perfect? The answer came days later, folded neatly in an envelope marked Child Protective Services, Case Closure Notice. I almost smiled. Almost. Until I noticed the line at the bottom. Report initiated by family member. Details redacted. The letter lay flat on the counter like a body waiting to be claimed. Eli read it twice, then looked up. Family member, he said slowly, like tasting a word he already hated. I nodded. They never could help themselves. Even when leaving, they needed the last word. Peggy sat at the table, coloring as the late afternoon sun slanted across her paper. The light touched her hair, making it look like the world had remembered gentleness. I folded the letter and slid it into a drawer. Some things didn't deserve display. That night, I found myself standing by her doorway long after she fell asleep. Her notebook lay open beside her, crown sketches lined like soldiers guarding dreams. One page stopped me. A list written in her uneven, determined handwriting. Good things. Pancakes for dinner. Cats with crowns. Mom doesn't leave. My throat closed. It wasn't joy that filled me. It was something quieter, heavier, clarity. The kind that humbles you more than victory ever could. The next morning, the house woke slow. No voices competing for dominance. No door slams disguised as punctuation. Just the click of the coffee machine, the hum of the fridge, and the faint sound of Peggy humming off key while brushing her teeth. Eli kissed my temple before heading out. You did it, he whispered. You protected her. I smiled, but something in me couldn't celebrate. Protection is a word that costs something. And peace, when it finally comes, arrives with the echo of everything it replaced. For weeks, the quiet felt foreign. We learned how to fill it gently. Peggy's laughter, the sizzle of weekend pancakes, the rustle of her notebook pages turning. Sometimes we'd still hear ghosts, Mom's clipped tone correcting my choices, Dad's disappointed sighs, but they faded a little more each morning. One rainy afternoon, a thin envelope arrived in the mail. I almost didn't open it, but the government seal caught my eye. Subject: adoption. Finalization: notice of approval. It was over, official, permanent. Peggy Arden. I sat down right there on the kitchen floor, letter trembling in my hands. Eli found me like that and sank beside me, laughing through his tears. Finally, he said. Peggy wandered in, curious. What's funny? Nothing, I said, pulling her close. Everything. We celebrated that night the only way we knew how. Pancakes for dinner, syrup everywhere, laughter that didn't need permission. She fell asleep halfway through her favorite movie, notebook still in hand. I tucked it beside her pillow and turned off the light. Outside, rain hit the windows like applause. Weeks passed. Seasons shifted. The calls stopped coming. Even Lily went silent. I imagined family group chats where I was now the cautionary tale. Don't push too far. Look what happened to Noelle. But silence has its own kind of language. It tells you who you were and what you've become. 6 months later, I found out through a neighbor my parents had unretired. Mom was stocking shelves at a grocery store, Dad pushing carts at a hardware chain. They looked tired, the neighbor said, not unkindly. That night, I told Eli. He didn't gloat, and neither did I. We just sat at the table, the same one where we'd once printed eviction notices and drawn battle lines, now cluttered with crayons and homework sheets. It's strange, I said finally. They're still the same people, just smaller. He nodded. That's what happens when power leaves the room. I stirred my tea and thought about forgiveness. How it isn't a door that swings open. It's a window you might crack, once, on a good day. I didn't wish them harm, but I didn't wish them back, either. That weekend, Peggy brought me her latest drawing. A cat on a tall chair, crowned perfectly straight. At the bottom she'd written, Home. I smiled. You fixed her crown again. She doesn't lose it anymore, Peggy said proudly. She learned. I kissed her forehead. So did we. That night, as the house settled into its evening rhythm, I checked my email one last time. A new message waited from a familiar address, my mother. Subject line, no hard feelings. I hovered over it, unread. The preview showed just one sentence. We did what we thought was best. I closed the laptop. Some ghost should stay quiet. Outside, thunder rolled far away, polite this time. Peggy's soft snoring drifted from her room. Eli turned in his sleep. I stood by the window, watching rain smear the city lights into long, trembling streaks. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was bracing for something. The house didn't hum with tension. It breathed. And in that breathing, I realized, quiet isn't the absence of sound. It's the sound of safety. Peggy's voice echoed faintly from her dream, a soft murmur I couldn't make out. I smiled. I can hear the quiet, she'd told me once. Now, so could I.